Hey, it's Jonathan McGinley, a Maxwell certified coach, speaker, and trainer, and the founder of Intentional Man, a company that exists to give Christian men the tools, the community, and the coaching to pursue God-sized goals, live intentionally, and build lives of significance. I want to get started here by having you think for a moment about some of the things in your life that you're most proud of. Think about the things you're most proud of. It could be a relationship, could be an accomplishment, could be a limiting belief or a fear that you've overcome. Maybe it's some sort of physical accomplishment like running a marathon or losing a bunch of weight. Think through some of those things, the things that you're most proud of, the best moments in your life. So if you need more time to think through some of those, just go ahead and pause the video and come back to me when you're ready, but go ahead and think through those now. And most likely, all of these moments, as they come to your mind, most likely these moments, they came with some sort of difficulty or challenge along the way, right? They most likely had obstacles you had to overcome, tough conversations you had to have, long hours of work or training, a whole lot of inconveniences along the way. Almost always, the things that you appreciate most in life, the most vivid memories you have, the times when you've felt most alive and the most proud of yourself, most of the time those things come on the other side of some sort of difficulty, some sort of challenge, some sort of inconvenience. Have you ever thought about that? The best things in life don't usually happen in the absence of challenge. They usually come because of the challenges that we've overcome. So I was having a conversation with my brother just the other day, and we were talking about just a couple guys that we know who seem to be just on cruise control. They're just kind of cruise control in their lives right now. They don't seem to be that passionate about anything. They're not going after their dreams. They're not going after their goals. Really good guys, love them to death, but they just aren't living with a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of joy. And I also had a friend tell me recently that he was talking to a guy, and this guy came up to him and said that he just felt the same way as those two guys I just described. And this guy, he described his life in 3 words. He said, "My life just feels ordinary, boring, and unintentional." Those were the 3 words this guy chose to describe his life: ordinary, boring, and unintentional. And man, I've been there. I really have empathy for him because I've been there so many times in my life. There are a lot of seasons in my life where I felt those things. I felt like my life was ordinary. I felt like my life was boring. I felt like it was unintentional. And when I was talking to my brother, I said that these 2 guys, I said, they're most likely feeling like this because they just don't have any challenge or adventure in their lives. Challenge and adventure are 2 elements that I've found that really awaken me and help me break out of that cycle of feeling like life is boring. So in these next 2 episodes, these next 2 trainings, I'm going to be talking about both of these elements, challenge and adventure. And as we hit on earlier, most of our exciting and exceptional moments in our lives have come after going through challenges. Yet oftentimes we set up our lives in a way that tries to get rid of anything that feels even semi-uncomfortable, right? We try to avoid pain. We try to avoid discomfort at any price, at any cost. And in his book, The Power of One More, Ed Milet, he writes, on the other side of all these amazing accomplishments, like the ones I just had you think about, on the other side of all these amazing accomplishments are the most exceptional memories, events, relationships, and possessions in your life. That's why, as unusual as it may seem, if you want a fulfilling and blissful existence, you must embrace inconvenience as a way of life. Wow, that's good, right? If you want a fulfilling and blissful existence, you must embrace inconvenience. What a change in perspective, right? When we think of challenges and obstacles, it's almost always negative. I usually don't think of those things as positive. We usually view them as negative. Those are things I typically think I need to absolutely minimize and avoid at all costs because they hurt, right? Because they're hard work, because they're uncomfortable. But if you realize that it is the exact existence of those things that makes the high moments in your life that much sweeter, then you can learn to change your perspective and start to appreciate the difficulties. And one of my favorite ways of looking at this comes from a guy named Colin O'Brady. He's an extreme athlete. He's done some absolutely incredible things. He's the fastest man to hike to the tallest points in all 50 states. I think he did it in like 19 days. The tallest point in all 50 states, like 19 days. He's climbed K2 in the winter. Most people barely even do that in the summer. Very few. And then even fewer have done it in the winter. And he was the first man to ever walk across the entire continent of Antarctica unassisted, meaning he dragged a sled full of all his food, all his supplies, his camping gear. He was dragging a like 350-pound sled, didn't have help from anyone else, 54 days straight in Antarctica by himself, walking 900 miles in freezing cold temperatures. Right? That's pretty crazy. He's done some incredible and difficult, uncomfortable things in his life. And he said that he likes to look at life on a scale of 1 to 10. So where 10s are the highest of highs, the absolute best moments in your life. Mostly some of the things that you thought of earlier when I asked you to think through these things. And, for him, it was the finish line of those incredible feats. It was when he got married. It was when he had a baby. Those are the 10s in his life. And then the 1s are the low moments, the times where you go through great pain, you go through discomfort. And most people, unfortunately, live consistently in the 4, 5, and 6 range. And Colin refers to this range as the zone of comfortable complacency. Most of our lives are set up to keep us in this zone, right? Like if you really think about it, our culture's set up to keep us in this zone. We don't want to experience any discomfort or change, so we just like to stay here. We're afraid to really go after the 10s because we know going after those 10s is going to require effort, it's going to require work, it's going to require some risk, it's going to require us getting uncomfortable and growing. And most people decide to settle for routine and safety instead of actually going after those dreams. But I believe if you spend too much time in that zone of comfortable complacency, that you're going to start to get those feelings of the guys I mentioned earlier, where their life feels ordinary, where it feels boring, where it feels unintentional. Even some of the things that are good in your life, like promotion at work or watching a football game with friends, like good things, but they're really only going to be 6s or 7s because you haven't invested enough time, you haven't invested enough energy into them, you haven't poured your heart and soul into them because you're still afraid of taking risk, right? And Colin said that he learned that he actually usually experiences the 10s because he went through some 1s, 2s, and 3s along the way, right? Being in the freezing cold in Antarctica, that sounds like a 1. Negative 75 degrees with freezing cold winds. That sounds pretty tough. That sounds pretty uncomfortable. 1, 2, 3. But then crossing the finish line, becoming the first man to ever do that, was the ultimate 10. If it was easy, I don't think it would have been the ultimate 10. So if you're listening to this, if you don't open yourself up to the possibility of experiencing a 1, a 2, or a 3, then you're not going to open yourself up to the possibility of experiencing an 8, 9, or a 10. You don't experience the 10s in spite of your 1s. You actually experience the 10s because of your 1s. It's the struggle, it's the battle, it's the discomfort, the fighting back, and then rising to the challenge that makes the accomplishment so sweet. So if you aren't experiencing much happiness or fulfillment in your life right now, you may need to just take a step back and see if you're consistently living in that zone of comfortable complacency. You may need to take a step back and ask yourself if you have any sort of meaningful challenge in your life right now. Are you taking the necessary risks to go after your dreams? Are you putting in the extra work to accomplish your goals? Are you willing to have that tough conversation with your wife to make sure that you have a great marriage? Are you going the extra mile in your marriage? Are you putting in work and time and effort to make sure it's a marriage that bonds deeply? I believe that God created men with the ability to take on tough challenges in life. He didn't just create us to be comfortable. He created you to be dangerous. He created you to create and build and pursue God-sized things. And he's given you his spirit to strengthen you and to help you overcome the obstacles. He says, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will go before you. I will be with you wherever you go. I don't think a life that is spent only in this 4, 5, and 6 range is a life that's honoring to God. I don't think it's honoring to everything that he's given you. I don't think it's honoring to the potential that he's placed in your life. Do you have some meaningful challenge in your life? Have you opened yourself up to feel some discomfort, knowing that it's leading to those amazing moments in life? If not, right now might be the time to add a little challenge. It seems counterintuitive, but I believe the most happy people in life are the ones who are constantly taking on challenges. They're constantly learning to embrace them because it means they're headed somewhere meaningful. The happiest people that I know are growing people. And growing requires being stretched, right? And growing requires taking risks and taking on challenges. A couple weeks ago, I got to hike a Colorado 14er with my dad. I love hiking these tall mountains in Colorado. A 14er is any mountain that's over 14,000 feet of elevation. And so a couple weeks ago, I got to hike one with my dad, and he's in amazing shape, but he's 65 years old, and he's had some trouble with his knees. And so our plan was to hike one of the easier ones. And when I say easy, they're all extremely difficult. It's only easy compared to some of the other ones that are really, really hard. But the plan for the weekend was that I was going to go do Mount Sneffels. Yeah, funny name, but Mount Sneffels, a more difficult peak on the first day that we were up in the mountains by myself. I was going to do that one by myself. The next day, we would go hike Mount Handy's Peak, which is it's an easier one, and we would do that one together. But then when we get to the area of these peaks, we realized pretty quickly the road to Handy's Peak was only accessible with a really high clearance four-wheel drive vehicle. And we were not driving that. We were driving my dad's minivan in case we had to sleep in there because we didn't have a campsite. So we're in this minivan. We're like, there's no way that we're going to be able to get through this road. There was no way for our car to get there. So he made an amazing and bold decision to go ahead and hike Mount Sneffels with me instead of us doing Handy's Peak together. So we go ahead and take this thing on. The first few miles, they're pretty straightforward. It's about a pretty nice trail, not too much elevation, a little steep, but not too crazy. But things quickly changed towards the top. We get to that last 1.5 miles, and the trail just disappears, and you have to go straight up the mountain on insanely loose rock. It's gravel, and it felt seriously like we were going 75-degree angle going up. It felt steep. I'm sure it wasn't, but it felt crazy steep. And the loose rock made it really difficult. So you had to be careful with every step. You had to make sure what you were holding on to, the rocks weren't going to fall, that your foot wasn't going to knock down rocks on people below you. One slip and you could be in trouble. So we are battling all the way up this super steep section. And then we get up to the top, you turn left and you kind of go through this gully, same super loose rock. But near the top of the peak, there's a snowfield that's in the normal route. So the normal route, you just keep going to the top, you take a left and you're there. But this snowfield is all hard and it's iced over and it's still super steep. So it made it impossible to go up the normal route. So we're looking around. We got to figure out a different way to get to the top. So we climb over this ridge to our left. And in that, there's some pretty exposed moves. There were some more difficult moves. It was a lot harder and scarier than I thought. And I couldn't believe the whole time I had dragged my dad up here. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm putting his life in danger. Lord, please protect us. So we just took it one section at a time, finally made it to the top. And this was just an absolutely amazing moment. It's a moment I'll never forget, honestly. We celebrated together at the top. We thanked God for keeping us safe. We turned back and looked at the trail we had come on and how steep it is, how loose it is, and couldn't believe that we made it all the way to the top. And I think it was the difficulty and the discomfort that we faced along the way that made the top so much better. And the fact that he took on that challenge and he got to the top at his age is honestly something absolutely incredible. And I know this is a trip that we're never going to forget. We're going to be talking about it the rest of our lives. It's truly a moment that I know I'm never going to forget. And I think if we had done Handy's Peak instead, it would have been a good accomplishment. It would have been a good time, but it would have been nothing like this accomplishment. And we would remember that trip, but we would not remember it in the same way as we do doing this peak. And it's because it was the difficulty. It was the discomfort. It was the times we had to push each other and encourage each other to keep going. It was the times we had to face the unexpected and we had to be resilient. It's because of those things that made that moment on the top of 10. That made that moment on the top something I'll never forget. If you had just helicoptered us and dropped us on the top, it would have been cool. It would have been a fun time. The views would have still been great, but it would have not been the same appreciation for that moment because we didn't work for it, because we wouldn't have gone through the shared experience of the pain and the perseverance. And I think there's so many times in life we're just looking for those shortcuts, right? We're trying to experience fulfillment and satisfaction and joy without being willing to do the work that actually brings those exact things. We hope to be just helicoptered to the top. We hope to stumble on success. We hope to have the best relationships in the world without being willing to do any of the hard work. But what makes life so joyful and fulfilling It's not the absence of challenge and difficulty. It's actually because of challenge and difficulty. Without it, nothing would seem fulfilling, right? Because it would all just be easy. It would all be ordinary. So if you find yourself coasting through life, if you find yourself describing your life as boring, as ordinary, or as unintentional, it's time to take on a meaningful challenge. It's time to open yourself up to the ones, the twos, and the threes of life, because when you do that, you're also opening yourself up to the eights, the nines, and the tens. So my encouragement to you today, your challenge for today, is to find that new meaningful challenge in your life that you can pursue. Something that's meaningful to you, that's going to awaken your creativity, that uses your gifts and your abilities, something that you can share with others, something that's going to stretch you to a place where you have to grow and where you need God to help you. Don't just wait until you feel like doing it, because if you wait until you feel like it, you're going to be waiting your whole life. So right now, determine that challenge, determine what it is, schedule it, and take action. Schedule it and take action. So I hope today was encouraging, hope it was inspiring and thought-provoking. And if you know that, if you think this episode can benefit somebody, please share it with them. Please give it to somebody who may need this. And make sure you tune in again in the next training when I talk about the other element that men need in their lives to break passivity. So thank you for being here. Go live a life you're proud of by living intentionally.